welcome to the Wasting Time podcast. This is episode 49. 49? We're almost at the 50 mark, Chris.
Yeah, it's taken nearly 5 years to get there, but we're nearly there.
It's been seriously accelerated over the last couple of years, though, hasn't it?
It has, yeah.
How's it going?
It's Friday night as we record this, so glad the week's out of the way. Yeah, things are good. We're in, at the start of like a second wave right now in Britain with COVID.
Newcastle is in lockdown again, to a degree. So.
Yeah, for the listeners, right? So obviously Nick and I record this with me being in London, him being in Newcastle. We haven't actually seen each other in person since.
You're gonna make me feel bad now, aren't you?
It's not your fault, to be fair. It's like it's been a year and a half since I've been in the same room as you. When we did the show off episode, that was the last time we saw each other in person, and yeah, it feels like COVID's determined to keep that happening because we were supposed to do Manchester Punk Festival together. They're supposed to come down next week, but yeah.
Well, you know what they say: absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Very much so, my friend. Yeah. How's things with you?
Good. Yeah, not too bad. Bit disappointed to not be seeing you next week, but. Yeah, all in all, fine. I've got a week off work now, so looking forward to that. We're going up to Scotland for a few days, which would be nice.
Nice.
So yeah, all good. I tell you what, what the latest development in lockdown.
Go on.
Basically, I'm part of a TV trial with work, so I've got a new TV box basically, and with that trial, I get access to all the premium subscriptions, sports, entertainment, and I get access to Hey You, which is all the awful reality TV, which my wife absolutely loves.
Right.
So she is going back and watching reruns of The Hills from the start.
I wondered if that's where you were going with this. Yeah, go on. I was thinking, how is this going to be linked to our kind of music? And I can see the link.
Yeah. So, I had no idea. And I sit and listen to it and I'm like, my toes are curling up. It's so awful. The people are terrible. And it's just, yeah, not good. And then all of a sudden, a cartel tune drops.
yeah.
The soundtrack is absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
So, every now and then, as bad as the situation seems to be, we get a golden pop punk tune from the early 2000s.
I think one of the main, I was going to say characters in that, but I suppose technically they're real people. But one of the main people in that, I think she's married to one of the guys from Something Corporate. Or
right.
Was or something.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of links to our kind of music with it randomly.
Anyway, what I've seen today, right, is a Drive Thru quiz on Alt Press. Do you fancy having a crack at it?
Yeah, I'm up for that.
Go on then. Try and do it quick.
Yeah, because this is a long episode, so yeah.
So, right, first question, Chris.
Go on.
Which band released the first album for Drive Thru Records? Was it Newfound Glory, The Benjamins, Cousin Oliver, or RX Bandits?
It's got to be either RX or Cousin Oliver.
I need one.
I'm gonna go with Cousin Oliver.
Cousin Oliver. 29% chose Cousin Oliver. Oh, we don't get the answer straight away. Maybe it'll come at the end.
Oh, we'll have to wait.
Next question.
Okay.
Which year did River Phoenix, later known as Phoenix TX, debut album first come out? 96, 97, 98, or 99?
99.
99? Ooh, only 9% chose that answer. Okay, which label first released Newfound Glory's classic debut, Nothing Gold Can Stay, before Drive Thru Records re-released it 7 months later? Eulogy Recordings, Victory Records, Go-Kart Records, or Tooth and Nail Records?
Eulogy.
Looks like a good answer. Okay, which album was Drive Thru Records' first release of 2000? Dashboard, Swiss Army Romance, Midtown, Save the World, Lose the Girl, Newfound Glory from Screen to Stereo, Alistair, Dead Ends and Girlfriends.
Oh, that's a great question. I'm gonna say Alistair.
You reckon?
They all came out that year.
41% went with Midtown. Which links in nicely with our guest today.
Well, this whole quiz does. I think you picked up.
Yeah. So what?
No, can I change my answer?
No.
Because I was going to change it to Newfound Glory.
Maybe
Actually.
you
But
can.
anyway.
Oh, no, you can. Newfound Glory. No, you
Yeah,
can't change it. Sorry.
All right, let's stick with Alistair.
Yeah. Okay. What's the name of the debut EP from the starting line? With hopes of starting over, falling into place, a sacrifice of life, or audio boxer?
With hopes of starting over.
63% chose that. Looks like a good answer. Where are post-hardcore juggernauts Finch from? Oh, loved a bit of Finch back in the day.
Or is it like Pomona or somewhere?
Temecula, California, Mesa, Arizona, Irvine, California, Carmel, California.
Oh, it's Temecula.
Temecula. Oh, there's quite a few questions here, actually. That's not ideal.
We're trying to buy a few of them, clearly.
Who produced Homegrown's underrated LP, Kings of Pop? Mark Trombino, Jerry Finn, Steve Evans, or Neil Avron?
These are good questions. These are good questions. I like this.
Yeah, we should have probably given some more time for this.
Yeah, I think either Neil Avron or Mark Trombino. I'm gonna go with Neil Avron.
The Trombino was the highest.
It must
choice.
Have been that then. Fuck.
Okay, which song is not on Alistair's Last Stop Suburbia? Scratch.
I'm gonna get this. Yeah.
Overrated, Flypaper, or Pictures?
Pictures.
Which year did Drive Thru Records have their own stage on Warped Tour? 2001?
2002.
There you go. Which act, this is like your quiz round all over, isn't it, really?
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Can you imagine if you were in a pub and you got this round? Like, okay, which act were not on Drive Thru Records? Anne Angle, Dave Melio, I don't even know who that is. Quiet Drive, or Genoa.
It's Quiet Drive, isn't it?
I don't even
Quiet
know
Drive definitely.
I don't even know the other artists, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I only know Anne Angle and Quiet Drive, obviously, but I know enough about Quiet Drive.
Okay.
Listeners, go and listen to our Quiet Drive episode if you haven't to yet.
There you go. Okay, Hello Goodbye were prominently featured on several episodes of MTV's The Real World, Austin in 2005. Which other Drive Thru Records band also got public love that season? The Early November, Halifax, Adelphi, or The Movie Life?
Oh, I've no idea. What was it? Halifax or who? What was the second one?
Adelphi, The Movie Life, Early November.
I'll say Early November.
Okay, Halifax were the biggest choice there. Okay, who produced Hidden in Plain View's? I'm not sure you get this one. Hidden in Plain View's debut LP, Life in Dreaming. Jim Wirt, Rob Freeman, Brian McTernan, or Andrew Wade?
Rob Freeman. That's just a guess, though.
It's the highest.
Never really got into Hidden in Plain View.
No, me neither. Which label did Senses Fail initially release their debut EP From the Depths of Dreams on? Vagrant, ECA, Fueled by Raymond, or Triple Crown Records?
I'm going to say Triple Crown.
ECA. Well, Vagrant was the highest choice. Which song opens Something Corporates, who we just talked about? Now classic LP, Leaving Through the Window. Is it As You Sleep, I Woke Up in a Car, Hurricane, or I Want to Save You?
It's Hurricane, isn't it? No, it's I Want to Save You. So I Want to Save You. Hurricane was the EP opening song. It's definitely I Want to Save You.
I'm not sure it is, but we'll see at the end. Who were the last band to release an album on Drive Thru? Houston Calls, I Am the Avalanche, Self Against City, or House of Fools?
Houston Calls?
I don't know if that means.
I was listening to a bit of Houston Calls last night.
Which legendary 60s artist had a 2-disc tribute album via Drive Thru Records in 2005?
Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan.
Yeah, it's underrated tribute album. That it's worth seeking out.
Which is not the name of an official Drive Thru Records compilation? Mulletcore, Where's the Beef, Another Year on the Streets, You'll Never Eat Fast Food Again.
I only know You'll Never Eat Fast Food Again from that. Where's the Beef? I'm going to go for.
Okay, I think it was Another Year on the Streets. Who produced? Oh, this isn't working. Oh, it's broken. Oh, I've lost that question. Okay, 2 left. How many official artist compilation DVDs did the label release? 2, 3, 4, or 5? DVDs.
2.
2. I think the answer was 4. You got 9 out of 20. Not very.
That's poor. Less than 50%.
Yes, I would expect better from you.
Yeah, that's poor. There were some tough questions in there.
Yeah. Better luck next time. Do your research.
I'd say let's go through the ones I got right and wrong. Time is of the essence, isn't it?
It doesn't even look like it's going to give us that. So
okay.
It's just put me on to the next quiz, which is, can you ace this Paramore Brand New Eyes trivia quiz? I'm going to
Definitely not.
I'm going to say that's a no from you.
No, it's not. No disrespect to Paramore, but no, there's no chance.
No. Anything on your radar at the moment? Briefly?
No, I'll be real quick. I'm just trying to think if there's been anything that came out that I've been really into. Not really. Knuckle Puck's album came out today.
I love it. I've listened to it. Yeah, I listened to it.
Yeah, you really like it.
Yeah, I really like it. It's kind of
it's the poppiest I've ever heard them sounding.
Yeah, and it's quite varied as well. Still, it's quite. I like. I think it's got a bit about it rather than just. Yeah, I guess it made me think of the the Greatest Generation, that One Year's album.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
That just had just mixed it up a little bit and had something for everyone, I guess, really.
Yeah. I mean, it's got
every song's a little bit different.
It's broadly pop punk, obviously, but it does vary. Yeah. I really like Earthquake, and I like the song they put out with the Mayday Parade singer. That it's called Breathe.
Of course, you would.
That one's been out for a while, but I still really like that song.
But that's all I've really listened to, I'll be honest. Seems to have gone a bit quiet on the new releases front, unless I'm just.
Yeah, we've got Machine Gun Kelly next week. We're really
is that next week? Is it?
To that. Yeah. So Slick Shoes got a new album next week.
All right.
So look forward to that. I think that's really it for like new releases that I've listened to. Should we get on and introduce our guest today?
Yeah, and I realise now, as we were doing that quiz, it did actually give me the right answers as we were going. It showed them up in green once I made your choice. And the question around I can't remember what it was.
First album of 2000 by Drive
Thru. Yeah, it was actually Midtown's
Save the World, Lose the Girl.
Save the World, Lose the Girl, which is our guest today. So it's Rob Hitt from the band Midtown. So
Rob was the drummer in Midtown. Midtown, who were a sort of real sort of seminal band of the turn of the century in our world of music. Meant a lot to a lot of people. I saw them a few times. I once went out to Holland to see them randomly, which I talk about in this episode. And they had quite a lot of success in the early 2000s, but they really kind of should have got to the next level, and they kind of sort of disbanded halfway through that decade. And then Rob kind of delved more into his record label he'd already started. So I think that kind of sets it up nicely, and here is our chat with him. So I met you a couple of times, like way back in the day. I don't know how much of this you'll remember, but basically, when I was like 19, I was in my first year of university, and I emailed you guys. So I was based in Brighton on the south coast of the UK, and I was like, been a huge fan of the band for a couple of years. You guys are coming to Europe. Me and my buddy have just bought plane tickets to go and see you in Utrecht in the Netherlands, and you got back to me and just said, "Oh, that's crazy. That's really cool. I'll put you on the guest list for the show." So we went out to Utrecht and met you there, and had a fun night and stuff, and then sort of stayed in touch a little bit. So then you came and played a show in Brighton where I was living at the time a couple of days later, and we kind of hung out again. So that's kind of, I don't know how much of these vague memories have stayed with you, but that's my history with you.
What year was that? The Utrecht?
So this would have been 2002. So like the Utrecht show was very early 2002.
Yeah. So
So
let me
like,
tell you why I put you on the guest list. When you're a band from from America and you're going to play the Netherlands, you don't know if anybody's going to show up. So if you can get one person guaranteed to come to the show, you should put them on the guest
yeah.
list. Don't give them an excuse.
2 random kids from England as well.
How was the show,
Exactly.
Chris? Was there many there? What was the turnout like?
I remember it being probably about 100, over 100 there. So
I'll take that.
Yeah. I remember it was a Sunday night as well. So to have like a lot of locals come out to that show, I guess like looking back would have been a decent one for you guys on that run. Yeah, and I remember it was a lot of fun, and like I think at that time, like you guys were like the first band I listened to that I actually met in person back then, and that was a huge deal for me. And like I remember, like it was a fun night.
Yeah, and now you're like interviewing Matt Pryor from the Get Up Kids. Would you ever imagine that? Look at that.
That's true.
That's cool. I looked at the website. You got you have a lot of really good artists you've been able to nail down and interview. Yeah, you're definitely a moment of time, because looking at it, I'm like, oh, well, we did shows with Mest and Show Off and
Yeah.
Get Up Kids and Goldfinger, and the Movie Life.
Yeah.
So it's just like, oh, this is Alistair. It's like, so I can see, and Josh Madden, he was always around. The funny thing about Josh is, yeah. I met Josh. Like my friendship with Josh actually wasn't totally Good Charlotte, his
Right.
brothers and whatnot.
Of course.
It was actually, we were both living in, well, I'm still in New York, but he was in New York at the time, and we were always going out to bars, like, it'd be like Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And back in the day around that time, they'd always have like I swear, back in New York, what was it, like 05 through 08 maybe, or 04 to 08? Every freaking bar had an open bar from like, 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Open Svedka vodka bar. So, when you're a kid in New York City and you have no money, that's the best thing in the world. You go out drinking and you go hard for that 1 hour. And I always, that's where, like, that's the kind of place, either Josh or I would be DJing one of those silly open bars at that time.
Okay.
So we became friendly, unrelated to funk music.
Well, wow. Okay. Are you still in touch with him?
Not so much. It's I mean, I'm not in touch with anybody, at least in person, during quarantine.
Of course, yeah.
But that's a lot of these people, you shared so many memories with them. The moment that you see them at a show, at a bar, or connect, or for some reason need to connect online about something, it's no time passes. It just, the light switch flips, and like it's as if you just you talked to them 3 days ago versus 6 years ago.
What about the rest of the Midtown guys? Do you keep in touch with them on a regular, or?
Actually, kind of do. Yeah, we actually do stay in touch. And even more recently, it's real interesting. It's like, now that we're all grown up and have real jobs, you're a different person, right? When you're in a van and you're touring America, or or Utrecht, you're just like the goofiest, biggest morons with each other, saying the dumbest stuff all the time. And I'll text with the old Midtown guys all the time, and we are still the biggest group of numbnuts you could ever imagine. Like the most disturbing, ridiculous memes that you see online, the only person I can share these things with, and they share them back to me, are my old bandmates. So it's as if, again, no time has passed, and it gives you that opportunity to be the ridiculous, 21-year-olds we were back then.
Sure.
I guess, I guess we want to probably get into that a little bit at some point. So, I guess what's things like in New York at the moment then? Bit of a ghost town, I guess, really, is it? Or...
Man, not even close.
Really?
I think it's easy for governments, or the news, for ratings, or for politicians' desires to spin things a certain way in their personal interest. if you're going to be out in Brooklyn or Manhattan at any of the parks on the weekend, it is packed because it's still summer. We're now in September and it's cooling down a little bit.
Yeah.
New York's awesome. It's not a ghost town. Certainly some people have fled, as they say, a lot of people talk about that. But at the same time, like, musicians have been going to LA from New York. It feels now for the last 10 to 15 years, you just keep hearing about, oh, this person's moving. And then, some people move back. And truth is, if people are living in New York, what it's going to do, it's going to lower the rent so everybody can move back in. It happened in the early 2000s. It happened in 2008 when the market crashed, and it'll probably happen again. It's a natural cycle, but it's more fun of a story for people to say New York is dead. Like, that's something you're going to read. You're not going to read, hey, people are going to leave and come back.
Right.
So, but go ahead.
Sorry, where is it? Your base is it Brooklyn?
Yeah, so I've been in Brooklyn for 18 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I never, for whatever reason, I never ended up living in Manhattan. And I've been, I don't know how familiar you are with Brooklyn, but you've probably heard of Williamsburg. So if not from the famous, not so famous Armor for Sleep song called Williamsburg, but it's so Williamsburg, Greenpoint, Park Slope, those are all places I've lived in Brooklyn. But a lot of people like to give it a tough time because I'm sure people are like, oh, Shoreditch, all the hipsters live in Shoreditch, in the UK.
Yeah.
And it's
like,
like, but I'm sure Shoreditch is probably a fun place to live and be around, and it's probably also not a lot of hipsters,
Right.
Well, I'm a Geordie, so I'm from the northeast of England, and when I go and visit Chris in Shoreditch, there's a lot of hipsters in Shoreditch.
So you're getting both the inside perspective and the outside perspective of that right there, Rob.
I think I've aged out of the term hipster. What age can you not even be considered to be made fun of in any way, shape, or form for that, and just be, now you can just be old.
Yeah, it's true. I think sort of 35 onwards, which I think at least the three of us here are definitely past that point.
Oh my God. Okay, so last night I was texting with Brendan from the band Valencia.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And we were going back and forth about an idea about, oh my God, what if there was like a documentary or a mockumentary, sort of like Spinal Tap, but even better, there's this movie called Anvil, which is about this Canadian metal band that's still going today. And they had done shows with like, I think Motley Crue or Guns N' Roses or those type of bands, or Metallica. Yeah. I think like guys from Metallica are actually interviewed in this documentary, and they're probably pushing 60 now, and they still haven't made it, and they're still trying, and they still have their jobs on the side. And it's, what if we did that? Like, what if there was an emo band with dudes in their 40s and like the premise is all that, and like you see them like getting all ready to go on stage before a show, like at a bar where there's 40 people, but you see them like flat ironing their hair, trying to get their tight pants like over their hips because they're just so tight now, and like a little bit of beer belly so they look more like a Mr. Potato Head with the stick figure legs. So I was like, wow, and we're like, oh my God, that's a great idea. And then we're thinking, we're probably the only two people that are going to really understand and appreciate and get the humor behind all of this. So, but yeah. So speaking of old people and emo, that's all I got for you.
I just wanted to ask you real quickly about that little sort of Twitter and Instagram thing you're doing, the Bodega Cats. Like, I didn't know about that, and then just like getting ready for this, like I saw that, and I mean, I'll let you talk about it, but it's just crazy the amount of followers it has, and it's a cool little thing. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I guess for anybody listening randomly, I started an Instagram and Twitter account about 7 or so years ago, and it's called Bodega Cats of Instagram on Instagram. And on Twitter, it's just the word Bodega Cats followed by an underscore. So Bodega Cats underscore. And what basically happened was I was out late one night, whether I was DJing, going to a club, maybe I had just seen your friend Josh Madden. I don't know. And I walked into a bodega in New York, a corner store, like a corner deli. They may have, some canned foods, batteries up on the wall, but they might also have, a place that historically New Yorkers would go to get a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich, even though I don't eat bacon, egg, or cheese. Where you go into the deli, it's called a bodega. It's just part of when you grow up in New York or live in New York for a number of years. It's what they call it. And I saw a cat, and I'm like, I've seen this before. I didn't think too much about it previously, but this is great. So maybe I had a little too much to drink that one specific night, and I'm like, okay, Instagram had just come out. Let me post it to Instagram. My friends really liked it, and the photo. I was like, oh, that's funny. I guess my friends like cats more than they like me, because they're liking that photo a lot more. So I'm like, it might be interesting. Let me just see if I create an account for this, because I think if it's going to make my friends happy, it might make a lot of other people happy. So I started the account, just started posting, like once or twice a day, whatever. And then people started sending me photos. So I'm like, what? I'll just post their photos and start tagging them, giving them credit. So I started doing that. And I'm like, and then I thought about it in the way that, I had always thought about music and being in a band where, especially more specifically, I guess, a punk band, because when you're in a punk band, you always think, okay, well, yeah, it'd be awesome to be successful, but maybe I can do something positive with that influence while being successful. And that's why you see, if the band does have, like, whether they're going to do a show for free to help a charity, whether they're going to donate a portion of their merchandise to some sort of organization, or just even simply support positive causes and direct people to certain causes or GoFundMe's, whether it's in their liner notes. We used to do that a lot in the late 90s and early 2000s. Artists would put, okay, follow, here's the link to PETA or whatever animal rights group, or Anti-Racist Action, which was another group. I think, Mike Park did a lot of tours with them, with his Asian Man Records, things like that, if I recall correctly. And like bands would put that in their liner notes. So there was always this other thought of, okay, yeah, this is cool and this is fun and it's making people happy and it's great, like what we're doing, but how can you also do something positive with that? So and that was always very important to me, not just, with music or this, social media, but also just in life in general. So I was like, well, maybe I can create a web store, and if people buy the merchandise of Bodega Cat stuff, then maybe there's certain causes I could take that money and take that, income, I should say the profits, and be able to, work with organizations, whether it's through specifically giving them funding or social posting for them to help bring awareness to them. So so I put up the web store, and it's not like selling a ton of merch, but it is bringing in a tiny bit of revenue, which I can actually use, and I write checks out to these other organizations, and one of them is called Flatbush Cats, and it's an organization that goes out to help control the feral cat population in New York City, specifically Flatbush, Brooklyn, but they're not only relating to that. So the idea here is, when you're in New York, if there's all these cats running around and they don't get fixed, they do TNR, which stands for Trap, Neuter, Return. So they'll get the cat fixed, and then they'll put the cat back into the population. But now the cat can't reproduce. So you've done a very humane way of controlling the cat population here in New York City. And it's not just the New York City thing, the idea of TNR. So this organization not only shares its stories of what they do, they also do training on it for how other people can do it. And a lot of times they get these cats and the cats are sick. So the funding a lot of times goes to the doctor's bills. Now, that's just one organization. there's an organization I physically met with last night called Greenpoint Cats, which is in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. And one of the things they've done, which I think is really great, that directly relates to what I do, is they'll go into the bodegas, they'll talk to the owner or the manager, or whoever's working at the bodega that has a cat in this bodega, and they'll say, hey, listen, can we take the cat, get it fixed, and then we don't have to worry about it having babies in the basement or wherever in the bodega. Right. So that's another organization we work with that we donate money to, and we'll be doing social posting with in the future to help bring awareness to them so they can help get more of these cats fixed. So it's directly related. Now, for people who are like, what the hell is a cat doing in a corner store? That are listening, that are unfamiliar with anything that I'm talking about right now, because we've talked nothing about music, only about cats and politics and COVID so far. But you have to think of it this way. You're in a metropolitan city, and what is maybe one of the best ways to control a mice, rat, and cockroach population?
Of course, yeah.
It's a cat. They have their primordial instincts from when they were scavenging the land, not domesticated. So you have to. So they look at it as what's going to be worse, a fine for cat droppings? I'm sorry, roaches, rat, or mouse droppings, or just a cat. It's going to be clean. Yeah. It's got its litter box, and the litter box is probably in the basement, whatever. So the risk versus reward there for them is the cat. And my God, who doesn't love walking into a store and seeing something familiar and sweet like a cat? So, yeah, that's the basic story behind Bodega Cats. It started out as something to make, I wanted to make my friends happy, and it turned into something where I can actually, help a cause and help do something positive. So, and I'm also open to ideas to work together with people if they have other ideas of maybe at some point it could extend beyond just the helping fund cat rescue organizations to more social justice or ways to work together with the owners of the bodegas that may be having hardships in certain ways. So, but I don't make any money off of it. I've been doing it for free out of my own time for a number of years. So kind of to go real deep in any other form, would probably need to work with some other organizations and people directly to put some of that legwork.
You've definitely got a base there. I'm just looking now, almost 280,000 followers on that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I noticed Boyd Hilton, who's like one of the really famous sort of TV critics and stuff here in the UK. I noticed he follows it, which I thought was quite random.
Yeah, it is funny. I have noticed a few people. It's like the funniest of recent times. The funniest one for me is, do you know who Mary Trump is?
Mary Trump. She's not the one who wrote that the thing about Trump recently, like Trump's niece or anything, is she?
It's Trump's niece. Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah. Because I know she released a book, about what he was really like and stuff growing up.
Yeah, I was like, one day I was looking at something. It said, Mary Trump follows Bodega Cats on Twitter. So I was like, oh my God,
that's mad.
But that's not uncommon. So, but like I said, it's like life is tough right now for everybody, whether it's jobs, financially, being quarantined or just working from home. And not leaving your front door for 48 to 72 hours at a time. If there's anything, I can do that can bring, just general people happiness, I'm hoping that this is maybe just one speck of making somebody's day 0.5% happier.
Nice.
0.05. Well, 0.5%. That would be good. That's 0.05. Yeah.
So, I mean, New York, as you talk about it there, seems kind of really ingrained in you from a community perspective and just, I guess, home perspective. Is that where you grew up? What was your kind of upbringing like from a young age in music, I guess, as a young lad?
Yeah. So I was on the East Coast since I was about 3 years old or so, and moved to New Jersey at 4.5. And New Jersey is really where I grew up. I should say I was in school the entire time I had any sort of schooling. other than my recent coding boot camp, was in New Jersey. And living, I think because those were my most formidable years, they were really the most influential on me and my life. So the interesting thing about Jersey is even though it's suburbs for the most part, it's also, I think it's the most densely populated state in all of America. So what does that mean? You're in a melting pot. You get a lot of influences around you, a lot of different cultures, and a lot of information as well. Like, so put aside the fact that, when I was growing up and getting into music, the internet was, had just started, at least in terms of punk music, for me. You had a lot of information. You had a lot of towns you could drive to that were close. And I think because of that, if you were to find a band you liked, right? Like in New Jersey, let's just as an example, there was a New Jersey band called the Bouncing Souls, and we were all into them in 1993 when they had just, when they were first starting to put out their less reggae funk stuff, or their less funk stuff, I should say, and their more punk hardcore stuff. There was like me and 8 friends in my high school that loved them. I shouldn't even say loved them.
Right.
And then we would see they were playing at this local, venue called City Gardens in Trenton, New Jersey. So we would go. Okay. And then all of a sudden, we just met the other group of 8 people from the town that might be 25 minutes away. So all of a sudden, we've built this web and this network of people who aren't like the jocks or the nerds or the student council kids or whatever you want to call them. In high school, we found the other us. So because of, maybe New Jersey being that close together, it was like, okay, so you hear the word scene all the time without even thinking about it. That's how that quote unquote scene starts. And then you realize you're in a band, and then, a few kids from that group of 8 are in a band. And then you're like, hey, we're going to do a show in, at Tyler's high school gym. Do you want to play the show? And then they're like, yeah, that'd be great. And then they're like, hey, our dad is part of this VFW thing, and we're going to which is just like a war veterans group, but they have these, like congregations, and they, these outposts all over America.
Right.
And they usually have like little halls that can hold, anywhere from 200 to, 600, 700, 800 people. So then they may be like, well, we just played your high school. Do you want to come play our VFW? And they're putting the shows on themselves. There's like, it's not like, there's some promoter or somebody like trying to get rich quick scheme going on.
Right.
That's how this scene started that we were part of. But it wasn't just, hey, this is awesome. This is, we're starting bands and doing these things. They may be like, hey, remember that band Operation Ivy? They just started this band called Rancid. You should check it out. So now you don't only have your own personal influence in New Jersey of your close friends. Now you have all these other friends. And then another kid that may be 2 towns away instead of 1 town away, you meet this person like, hey, why don't you send me your upcoming shows? I just built a website that's listing all the New Jersey shows. So all of these little things are super connected. And I think, they all play a super important part of why and how so much music became so important in this scene coming out of New Jersey.
So that was kind of like the beginnings of it being created for, all the bands that came out of that area, I guess, in the late 90s, I guess, like who are all like similar age to you and stuff, I suppose.
Yeah, mid-late 90s, because for whatever reason, the idea of people putting on their shows to such extreme, like bands putting on their own shows, I think in the 80s you were like, well, you go play CBGB's or you go play, whatever club in New York, and it was more about the club life. There was just a perception that you didn't do it yourself. There was that perception where once you saw how the model of doing the shows yourself work, or your friends put on the shows, or anybody from the age 14 to 22 were the ones putting on all the shows that you were performing in high school and college. Yeah, that was the standard versus the exception. And going to play the club would be like, well, you got to pay the toll to get into New York. You got to beg the promoter to get on the show. You're probably going to play first. So this was perfect.
So, yeah, I can see how it grew. So at this point, was that when you were in because you were in the ska band earlier on. Was this
I
the
usually
ska
don't
band
tell people
time?
about that. It was both for sure. Yeah. So
Okay.
when I was in high school. Yeah, it's funny. I'll still text whenever I see an old flyer. I'll text the guys from my ska band and send it to them. But ska was real big, 94, 95, 96. If anybody was born at that time, they might remember, it's right when Real Big Fish and Goldfinger launched, and there was a ton of other bands. It was kind of like, I feel like there was this little moment where big band and swing had a moment in the early 90s. If you remember bands like Cherry Poppin' Daddies, Squirrel Nut Zippers and whatnot. But that music was so specific, and it was like just that. There was no like kind of other version of big band or swing. But so then people are like, well, you know what? With ska, you can do like traditional ska, pop punk ska, ska core, all these dumb names and ridiculous things that were going on. So I think that's why ska was able to have this, more appealing, casting a wider net in terms of fans and kids wanting to play it. So whatever, I had this band called, well, this is basically the story with this band. We were very local. However, we played with a ton of hardcore bands, a ton of pop punk bands. Like we played, like one of our local New Jersey bands was called Bound. Bound X, and we played within their basement all the time. They were, some of our really great friends. And the singer one day, he's like, "Hey, I just went down to Philly and tried out for this new band with the guitarist from Lifetime, and now I'm the singer of the band called Kid Dynamite." So it's just like how it was back then, But the really thing the bad thing I'm guilty of with this ska band isn't the silly music, isn't any of that stuff. Well, if you recall, the thing about being in a ska band when you're real young is putting the word ska in the band name. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so. I'm trying to think of some examples, but
or you could put the word tones in it, like the Skeletones. There's a band called the Scofflaws, the Boss Tones.
Yeah.
There's a band called Mephistopheles. All those sorts of things.
Yeah.
So that was a really big thing. So the singer, he came up with the best, but also the worst ska band name of all time. It was called the Ska Skank Redemption.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
So you get the ska and you get the skank, so it's like a twofer. So the thing about that was, like, we knew it was bad, but it was also genius. But I was like, if we're ever, and this is me talking in like, I'm a freshman in college at this point because we were a band in high school and then I went to college, and I'm thinking to myself, first of all, I could see that ska was kind of like on the way out. Like, just people weren't as into it anymore. And I saw that. I was like, if anybody would ever take us seriously, how could you take a band called Ska Skank Redemption seriously? So what happened was we got a show at Rutgers with Less Than Jake. So Rutgers was where we went to school. So I'm like, okay, I put my foot down. I'm like, hey, if we're going to have a shot, it's not too late. Trust me. Nobody knows who we are. Like, don't tell me that we've already established ourselves as Ska Skank Redemption. We need to go on stage at the show, tell them we're changing our name to a new band name. And we called ourselves the Royalties, like a music royalty, because we were like anti-major label, DIY, all that kind of stuff. So we played that show, and we ended up changing the band name. We did like 8 more shows, and then we broke up. So it was all worth nothing. But that was kind of the history of that ska band. But there was actually 2 shows that we played that ska band played where I did double duty because I had started Midtown at the end of the Royalties, at the end of Ska Skank Redemption.
So it was like a slight overlap then.
There was an overlap where I did. I don't think I could ever even consider doing 2 shows again in my life in one day with the exhaustion. But yes, there was 2 shows where I did a show with the Royalties and a show with Midtown. I think one of them, the first one, I think the Royalties actually played after Midtown, and the second one, Midtown played after the royalties. So it was kind of one of those fun little scenarios in life. But what is nice is a lot of those bands from back then, like there wasn't like animosity in terms of that. Maybe some of the royalties guys were bummed, but in terms of like human to human, it was nice that the guys in Midtown and the royalties knew each other and could say positive things about each other. So that made me happy.
Is it a bit of a drummer thing as well? I always feel like drummers are more often shared amongst bands than any other member of a band, just because there's not many good drummers around.
I never thought of that, but you're so right. I never even considered that. That's a really good point. I think they were just a bunch of good people in general.
So I guess fast forward a little bit then with Midtown that came together at that time. Kind of what was the early journey that led kind of to it really becoming a real building some steam and really becoming a thing.
Yeah, it actually leads directly into that. So,
cool.
Being in that band with 7 band members, it's like to get anybody to practice, you felt like you were their boss.
Oh my God, that would have been a nightmare.
Because all I wanted to do was, give 100% into this and see what we could make of it. We're like, I remember in high school, we had this sax player, and he's like, "We're gonna practice. I spoke to my dad, and you need to pay me $15 every time I come to practice." I'm like, who is this guy? Like, who does he think he is? He was so right. because if you're a ska band, like, how do you find a damn horn player? You go in the hallway in high school, and you try to find the band kids, right? I wasn't a band kid.
Yeah.
I should have been. I would have been a much better drummer. But so like, oh, he plays sax. Let's just ask him. He plays trumpet. Let's just ask him. So that's what you had to do as a ska band in high school, because typically it's hard to find any kids that understand punk music and listen to it. So my point is like trying to make that happen and just like not enjoying the music as much anymore. Like I knew the music I loved, whether it was like Lifetime, Bouncing Souls, Rancid, Operation Ivy, Jawbreaker, Saves the Day, all that stuff. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I was in love with it. I wasn't even listening to any ska music other than like the old 60s traditional music or rocksteady from the 70s, things like that. So I was like, so that ska band played 1 million shows with Gabe, my singer of Midtown's first band, Humble Beginnings, Tyler and Heath's band, Nowhere Fast. Like we all knew each other because, like I said, they were that group of 8 kids in the other town, and then those guys had the band. So that's how we got to know each other. And I was like, well, listen, nobody wants to practice. Why don't I try to like be in a band with the guys that are like me in the other bands in the other towns? Because they'll actually care, want to practice, maybe go on tour and do something positive with all this hard work we're putting into it.
Right.
And I had spoken with Gabe. Are you happy with your band? Because I'm not happy with my band, and this isn't, it's not fun for me anymore. Like, maybe you want to jam together or something. Like, so that's how Midtown started. Like, I had met Gabe when we were kids through a campmate of mine, who happened to be the singer of his band, of his pop punk band. So we became friendly, and then we actually ended up going to Rutgers together. So when we were at Rutgers, we're like, well, we had met up with our friend Tyler, who was in Nowhere Fast, and we asked him to join. Mm-hmm. He was the singer of Nowhere Fast, and he had a guitar player in his band named Heath, who was just the nicest guy ever, and but also one of the best shredders guitar-wise. Still to this day, I think I've ever come across. He's just nice. In all these years, he's still one of the best guitar players. And I think that's common knowledge. It's not just just because I was close to. He's just really the greatest. And so the three of us had started Midtown while I was at Rutgers and Gabe was at Rutgers. I don't know if Tyler might have been still a senior in high school at that time, and we kind of coerced Heath to be in the band with us because he has a great voice. He's a shredder on guitar.
Didn't you just kind of say, "Oh, we've got to practice. Do you want to just come along and hang out?" And with the secret intention of trying to get him to join.
Yeah, we didn't formally ask him to be in Midtown, we came up with a scheme to kind of squeeze him into the band without him knowing.
Yeah.
So at Rutgers University, where we were at school, they have these things called the grease trucks, which at the time there was 8 before food trucks were a thing. Specifically, Rutgers had these 8 trucks that formed they actually formed kind of like a figure 8. They were in groups of 4, a square of 4, and a square of 4.
Right.
And we're like, Gabe and I formed a plan with Tyler that Gabe and I would just happen to be there. And Tyler was going to hang out with Heath and kind of just happen to bring him to there as well. So Heath comes along. I think maybe Tyler's there with him. And me and Gabe are there waiting patiently. And we're like, oh, what's up, Tyler? Heath, how you doing, man? Like, what are you doing here? So, totally, just scheming up this plan. We're like, oh, we're actually doing this band thing, Heath. Why don't you come over to the rehearsal space and watch us practice? Now, the whole time, the idea was to get him to be comfortable feeling like this was a thing he should be a part of.
Sure.
So we, the way I envisioned it in my head is we hogtied him and threw him in the trunk of the car, blindfolded him, took him over to band practice, threw him into the space and forced him to watch us rehearse. But no, he just went in the car and followed us there. But so we played like 4 or 5 songs. And then he was kind of like in the corner and we're like, so we think you should be in our band. And he had no clue at all we were going to ask. He just thought it was a hang.
Yeah.
Or maybe we're just showing him this band we got. So that's, and he's like, yeah. And literally 2 weeks later, we go in to record our first EP for Midtown.
Yeah.
And the dude is just like shredding all over it. He learned every song within 2 weeks and killed it, and it really made a big difference for our band.
Was that what was it called? Sacrifice of Life or something?
That's right.
Was that
the Sacrifice
was that the first
of Life,
one?
yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
I feel like, this is me just going from memory, not my notes here, but so forgive me if I get things wrong, but I remember there was that song, Take the Easy Way Out. That was catchy. And then was there 1 or 2 songs that made it onto that first full length on it as well? I could be wrong. This is
So Easy Way Out did not make it to Save the World Is the Girl, our first album.
Yeah.
But the song Direction did make it.
Is that one of who sings on that one? Is that Tyler?
That's right. No, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
So, and then I think, and there was another one of the fast songs. Listen, bro, it's been over 20 years. I might need to. Where's Spotify? And I'll tell you something nice about this EP in a minute, which I'm pretty stoked on. But so the Sacrifice of Life. That's me typing into Spotify. I love that. I remember putting that artwork together with Gabe and making that logo. We did the artwork together on that one. The Living in Spite. I think we put that on.
Was that on Save the World, Lose the Girl? I feel like it might have been.
Yeah, so I guess direct. Oh, Come On.
Come On. Yeah.
Yeah, so Come On, a Direction we put on Save the World, Lose the Girl.
Yeah.
From that EP. But a really quick story is our friend Jay, Pinball Records, he put out the Sacrifice of Life EP.
Oh, sorry to cut you off, Rob. I just noticed now that it's released under your record label, which
that's what I was about. Yeah, you just ruined the story.
Sorry. Oh wow. Sorry.
So what I was going to say is, so we bought the masters off Jay. I don't remember exactly the details. And then we were like, our friends at Eyeball Records, they put out like the first My Chem, Number 12 Looks Like You, a bunch of other bands. And I was like, well, we're on tour all the time. You want to just like distribute it? I love those guys, by the way. Let's just be clear. But I said, do you want to distribute it? And they said, yes. And then I was like, so for a few years, they had it up online. They redid the artwork. They put up new artwork for it. They pressed a few CDs. And then we were like, wait a second, we're not getting any royalty statements. So I was like, I said, hey, Mark, can I take this back because technically we own it and we haven't gotten paid, and put it out on my label? And they're like, okay, yeah, of course, sure. So that allowed me to take something that was Midtown's, that was ours, and release it personally. And I know it's an EP and it's a nothing thing from back in the day, and it's, you know, one of the small things that we ever did, but there is something that feels real good about having control on the music that you actually make and that you put out. So that was one of the fun things for me post Midtown that I was able to do. That makes me still feel close to everything we work on. So technically, I am the record label, and I do write checks to Midtown Band LLC for
Nice.
for $5.83 once a year to these guys. So we're rich, clearly.
I was just going to say, yeah, going back to obviously progressing into kind of Save the World, Lose the Girl. Obviously, that was released on Drive Thru. I mean, talk us through that initial, I guess, you know, how the Drive Thru relationship came about, and how that kicked off, I guess, really.
Yeah, and then obviously the ups and downs, but I suppose we'll get to that.
Yeah. So it's real funny. That same grease truck parking lot that I was telling you we abducted Heath, air quotes abducted Heath. That if I recall correctly is the first or second time that I actually met Stephanie, and I think Richard too, from Drive Thru Records. I remember. This is how ridiculous it was. This is a very true story. Stephanie was very proud because I guess she had just taken a shit, and the shit looked like Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead.
I remember reading that you'd saying this in an interview years ago.
Okay, so at least I'm not making this up, because I feel sometimes I repeat these things that are facts from past, but they actually sound made up. So she pulls out a Polaroid of her shit that looks like Jerry Garcia. I don't remember if it did or didn't look like it. I didn't want to look very long. It was one of those.
Yeah, of course.
I feel like if it did look like him, you would have remembered.
No, I don't want to remember anything. I would no. Because listen, if you're looking at something in a toilet, you don't want to look very long. Like you but moreover, to try to look at that and try to make out the facial features from, this art masterpiece, clearly, you're not. It's not for me. How about that? Let's put it that way. It's not for me.
That's fair.
But so what was I saying? Yeah, so how we actually met Richard and Stephanie is I think they were interested or friendly with Humble Beginnings, Gabe's band.
Okay.
And Gabe told them, "Hey, I have this thing Midtown," and I remember very clearly we were excited about it because they were friends with Blink. They had released Phoenix TX or River Phoenix or whatever.
Yeah.
And we really liked what they were doing. This is all pre Newfound Glory and all that stuff.
Of course.
On Drive Thru. And we're recording that EP where I said, "Hey, Heath was in the band 2 weeks later. He's shredding on this EP." It was literally at that time in that same studio, Portrait Studios, but this guy, Chris Badami, a producer, recorded it, where we were, I think at this point we were mixing or had at least finished recording the songs. Gabe's talking to them, gave me the phone to Richard and Stephanie.
Yeah. And
I remember we were physically holding up the phone receiver, like a physical phone receiver, pre-cell phone, to the speakers. And I feel like the speakers were in the air, right? So sometimes they put them in the corner of the studio walls. And they're like, "Cool, we want to sign you." We're like, "What?" like through the phone like that. So obviously, signing a band is a little more in depth when you have contracts and all that kind of stuff. But that's how our initial, the day one of sort of making something serious with Drive Thru happened. That was the day one. And then we met them at the grease trucks. I think we got our friend's non-entertainment attorney to look at the contract, which they told us was we got a contract from Fat Records and we changed a few things. And that's our Drive Thru contract. So that's what they gave us. And then we actually signed that contract on our way out to recording our first album with Drive Thru, our full length, Save the World, Lose the Girl. But to tour it, because for us, it didn't make sense if we had a van and a trailer to drive straight out to LA. Let's see if we can put some shows together along the way. So at that point, we had become friends with Newfound Glory.
Right. Yeah.
And whether it was emailing, but also Gabe's brother put on shows at those, what I called VFW halls, right?
Yeah.
We also, they call them VFW halls, American Legions or another version, Elks Lodges or another version. They're basically all the same idea of war veterans. They have these groups where they hang out together and barbecue and put on events. And so Gabe's brother Ricky put on so many shows, he would basically have Newfound Glory come up to New Jersey to play shows, and let's trade shows. So on our way out, well, first of all, we became friends with them. So then we let Drive Thru be like, hey, you got to hear this band Newfound Glory.
Yeah,
they're great. You got to sign them. So that's how we met Newfound before they were involved with Drive Thru.
Yeah.
And then when we went down to to Florida on the way to California, they had us play a show at one of their friends' skate parks.
Okay.
So we did that show with them. But when we physically signed that Drive Thru contract, it was in this hotel room in Florida. Well, we signed the contract. We walk out of the hotel room. Newfound Glory walks into the hotel room, Drive Thru's hotel room, and then they signed their contract. So technically, we were signed to Drive Thru before Newfound Glory.
Just before,
But it's a really cool thing because they've done really well, and they meant a lot to a lot of people's lives. So it's kind of cool to see how a lot of these things from back then you can never imagine today how closely interconnected and related they were.
That first record, was that what they got you Mark Trombino on that?
I think one of the interesting things about life is if you just don't consider something and never ask, then you don't even have a shot at it, even if it seems like a pipe dream.
Sure.
You got to think about this time. It's summer 1999, and we were thinking about producers late 98, early 99. Damn it, Dude Ranch was out by Blink-182. For people like us, it was the biggest thing in the entire world for like punk kids in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And we loved that, but moreover, from a physical production standpoint, Mark Trombino had done all the Jimmy Eat World stuff, and we were just obsessed with Clarity. Clarity is one of those albums you could play in the van and you might keep on 2 to 3 listens in a row.
Yeah.
And just the audio, the record, it sounded so good. So we're like, okay, who are our dream producers? And like at the top of our list was Mark Trombino. So I guess Drive Thru's friends with Jimmy Eat World, so they're friends with Mark Trombino, and they asked him, and Mark's like, cool, take a few days, record this quick punk band. And he's like, because for him it would be a quick, easy thing. He heard the demos and he liked the demos. Well, what he didn't know is that this quick little punk band, maybe the drummer wasn't as good as the drummer thought he was because he had never played to a click before. The band was very specific and critical, or maybe Mark was like, well, let me just get this right because this could be awesome. So this, 10-day thing that was supposed to be 9 to 10 days to record ended up being 2 months in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And so we ended up, and that was Save the World, Lose the Girl. And that's how we got involved, and that's how we got Mark on board. And Mark agreed to do our second album as well, Living Well is the Best Revenge.
One thing I heard you say recently that I was surprised about was that you said you had to fight for the opening track, Just Rock and Roll, to basically even be on the album. I'll let you answer then, and I'll come to my thoughts on that song. But
well, obviously anything is 2020 in hindsight after you're familiar with it, right?
Yeah.
But he wanted to have. So I remember this clearly. Actually, I'm gonna be unprofessional and look on my computer again. I'll tell you this. Yeah, so this will be interesting for you. So there's this song called Another Boy on Save the World, Lose the Girl.
Yeah, that's like the 30-second song or something, wasn't it?
So, in general, I don't necessarily disagree with Mark on this in general, but he wanted that song to be first because if it's only 30 seconds, well, it's not going to waste any time getting to the second track. So you're not going to lose any fans. Right. And, And it's a fun little punk song to just get people like, okay, this is cool. And then like, oh wait, oh my God, this second song is so different. I was like, I get it. But have you ever heard a song start out with like 3-part vocal harmony, 3 kids scream or yelling it together in unison, like some old 70s rock song from Kiss?
Yeah.
And what the hell does God, I wish I could hate you for the rest of my life even mean? If you hear that as an opening track on the album, whether you think it's terrible or great, you're going to have some sort of interest to keep listening along to what this song is. Besides the fact that, you know, that I think is actually just a really good song on its own right. So, but even take that out of the equation. Like, that's the way to kick off an album if you want to, like, you know, punch somebody in the face and be like, you got to listen to this. And also, people didn't really skip tracks and have that ability in the same way in 1999 or 2000 when it came out, like they deal with Spotify or iTunes now, where it's just super easy. There was a lot of passive listening back then where you listen to all of it, or you're going to take it out right away if you don't like it.
Well, it's funny because, like, I just think the intro to Just Rock and Roll just really grabs you, and I'll give you an example of how it does. Because, you know, I had that record sort of in around autumn 2000, and I remember, like, I was talking to my buddy on the phone who lived at the other end of the country, and I was just like, I've just been listening to this band Midtown, and I just played him down the phone. That's the start of that song, and like before it even got to the you know, the first verse, he was just like, this is amazing, and like he like ordered the CD on, you know, like there and then, and like it was like, you know, because this was 2000, he ordered it to be delivered to like a specialist shop in Brighton where he lived, and he used to go every week to see if they had his Midtown CD. But it was just from hearing just the start of Just Rock and Roll. So, you know, I think
through the telephone.
Yeah, exactly. But it's
so
just because like what you say about it, just because it's got that unique sound and it just draws you in.
Do you think? I guess from your experience, kind of with what artists are doing today, and you say that, like, we don't listen to music in the same way. We don't pick up records. We don't, you know, go through things like that. Do you think artists, like bands, like approach things differently now, or do they still have that consideration that, you know, you'd have before in terms of how you compile an album and where things sit within your track listings and stuff? Do you think there's still that?
Yeah, so the consideration is certainly still there. There's no question at all. And I can say a lot of this stuff, even though it's been a number of years from the bands I released on my record label. But the difference is the idea of having to go in to record and having to do 10 to 12 songs that's not necessarily the goal or objective any longer. A lot of labels may feel that their goal and objective is to just this, anytime you have a new song out, let's get a single out. Let's just keep getting music out there in the ether, you know, like these major label people. But even at that, it's completely realistic to have an EP, and that EP could be just as strong as an album in terms of like retention and what people are excited about and what they feel good about. But moreover, you know, it's like when a song goes viral off TikTok, they're not looking at the album. They just hear one song. And then, you know, they get the next one. But I will say this, it is important, because if you do find a song on YouTube or TikTok or Shazam or whatever, and then you go to Spotify, the song that's going to play after better be damn good in that track listing, because that's the song that people are they're gonna know you by after to decide if they want you as a fan. They get you on the first song, but if you want to make a fan, that track listing of the song that comes right after it better be damn good.
Cool. I guess just going back to kind of you know, those first 2 albums, and I guess be keen to hear a little bit about how things were for you guys from a touring perspective, and how crazy that got, and how ready you were for the acceleration, I guess, that happened as a result. Like, you know, what was the, you know, how did that feel for you at the time? And yeah, it's looking at you,
because you got put on some fairly big tours, didn't you? Like, you know, in the lead up to before you released your sophomore release, that when you got kind of upstream to MCA, like I remember you guys, like, I'm sure you went out with like Blink and people like that around that time.
So, I mean, that was by far the biggest thing we had ever done. You know, in terms of, and I'll get to that, but I think in terms of perspective of getting big quickly, it's interesting because remember we signed with Newfound Glory the same day Newfound Glory signed to Drive Thru. So
Yes.
we always had a barometer to look at. Oh, maybe we're not doing that well or we're not that big, because even if we were doing well, we still saw Newfound Glory taking off, accelerating quite a bit faster. So what that did is that just pushed us to keep working hard and trying and, you know, giving it our best shot, and not letting off, you know, the gas pedal. So,
Yeah.
but we did get really fortunate and really lucky. Right, we were actually while we were recording, "Living Well Is the Best Revenge," our second full-length album. This was the album where Drive Thru had upstreamed us and said, "Hey, you're basically gonna graduate from Drive Thru Records and put out your album on MCA Records, which gives you a little bigger budget, gets you like, you know, Drive Thru isn't necessarily working all of the promotion and everything at that point. It's going to be MCA that they were under Universal Records, Universal Music Group before they went defunct. Now, because of all of that, and our management and our booking agent, and all those relationships, what happened was end of that summer, we found out, hey, Newfound is opening for Blink-182 in these arenas. This was when like the days of Take Off Your Pants and Jacket by Blink-182 came out.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, why don't you open like eight or nine of these shows? And the second half of it, Sum 41's going to open. Of all things in the world, 9/11 happens, right? Which is timely because yesterday was actually September 11th. And for a million reasons. And if you lived through it, you can just remember how weird it was and how unexpected it was. And you didn't know what tomorrow was going to happen. We didn't know if there was going to be more terrorist, bombings and things like that. So they actually canceled. And I don't remember if it's because they couldn't come across the border or if there was going to be issues at the border because of all of this going back and forth. But they canceled their opening spot, and Blink was like, hey, listen, we like you guys. If you want, you could fill up the rest of the shows whenever we decide to start doing these shows again. Because I think there might have been a hiatus of shows after September 11th. So it's really sad and unfortunate. But it ended up turning into one of the largest things of our career, even though it was only an extra like 6 or 7 shows. I still have friends today being like, oh, I saw you in Atlanta, Georgia with Blink-182. I was like, wow, crazy. So yeah, it's one of those like bittersweet kind of situations. But yeah, it's just ironic and interesting that was like the timeline of events and how Sum 41 was involved and whatnot. But that was definitely the biggest tour we ever did. In terms of like stuff like Warped Tour, we actually never were offered a full Warped Tour. In fact, we were never even offered half of a Warped Tour. I think the most we ever got offered by Kevin was 2 weeks. But, with friends and other bands and everybody, they feel like, oh, yeah, Midtown, you were a Warped Tour staple. I'm like, no, I would have loved to have been. That would have been great.
But that wasn't the case. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I've just, sorry, Rob, I just remembered something. So real quick, going back to when I met you guys in Utrecht on that random night in early 2002, I remember talking to I think it was Tyler, and he was just talking about, because that's, when Blink had all their clothing stuff like Atticus and Macbeth and all that stuff, and he was telling me and my friend Alan, who are out there, just about how you guys had been at a party at Mark Hoppus's house, and he was showing all the latest designs for Atticus, and he was like, and it's funny, and then he pulled down his shirt, and he had like the Broken Heart Atticus tattooed on his chest. I remember.
Oh
randomly.
My god, I need to
and he was
shit for that.
Yeah, and also, and we were just laughing, just thinking, oh, that's that's random, and he was just like, yeah, I don't even like this tattoo that much, but whatever. And I just quite liked his attitude.
So it's funny because there would be no reason for me to think of that, but you experienced that. I'm going to text Heath and Tyler right now. Tyler,
do
do
please.
you have an Atticus?
Yeah. Do that as you speak. And also, just to add to that, so after that trip, like me and my friend, we just, and like we didn't do this as like a cheesy, sincere thing, I promise, but we're just like, what if we both got that tattooed? Like, you know, because Tyler was just like, he was just this attitude where he's almost like laughing about it. If we did that too, and we were just like, we kind of talked ourselves into doing it. So we got the same tattoo after that encounter with Tyler almost. And then when you guys came and played Brighton, where we were living at the time, a few months later, like we were showing Tyler and like, and it was just, and we were all laughing about it. I promise it wasn't like a serious thing, like, oh, let's get this broken heart in our arm. But so I still have it, and it's from that.
You're not saying anything to embarrass me. You'd be embarrassing yourselves that you got the same.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
As some guitar player from Midtown.
Yeah. But yeah, no,
Let
definitely.
me tell you this.
Go on.
If he texts me a photo of it, you both need to take your photos and post it up on this so everybody can see the matching tattoos.
Yeah. I'll promise to do that, definitely. But yeah, no, send that to him for sure. We're kind of moving into the sort of murky period with Drive Thru, because I remember, like, I guess going back to that night in Utrecht as well, because Gabe came out for beers with us afterwards, and after a few beers he started saying what he really thought of Richard and Stephanie from Drive Thru, and that was kind of the first time I was aware of like the issues you were having with them, and I guess you kind of had like a sort of bumpy period with them from sort of 2002 onwards, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's the typical story you hear with a lot of artists and record labels, especially when an artist starts to take off, but then, you know, might hit some kind of leveling point. And they're like, well, why is that leveling point happen? Well, obviously it's the record label. So, you know, that's how the artist thinks. So, you know, it was a lot of things. It was like, hey, what's up with our royalty rates and these expenses on our statements? And are you even sending us statements? And why aren't you giving us more finances for promotion, you know, on the album? And on top of that, they're just some of the most highly opinionated people you'll meet. It's because they are super passionate. So, you know, it's a lot of that. The reasoning, you know, with why I think we had a lot of back and forth with them. I still talk to them all the time, actually. Not all the time, but, you know, pre-COVID, if they were to come to New York, we would at least try to get lunch or dinner.
Oh, okay. So you're good all these years later, then, basically.
Oh yeah, and I think all of us. I don't think like even, you know, I do. Gabe would be better to speak for whatever reason. My memory just maybe it shut down on on some of that specific information, probably for a good reason. To not, you know, to keep things positive of what all the things that transpired between us and Drive Thru. But honestly, I don't see why. Like, listen. You're young and you're naive. Everybody, not even just us, you know, like even the label potentially. And so it's kind of like you live and learn, and why at this point it means nothing to our lives and our future and our livelihood of what a royalty meant from 2001. Because we're probably today it's probably making pennies anyways. So why have the anger and the hate? It just doesn't help anything in anybody's life. So I bet everybody here would be more than happy to see them randomly.
But so obviously that next album though, when things were probably, I suppose, a bit raw, like I heard you, because I was listening to the episode you did of This Was the Scene podcast, which is obviously a podcast that, you know, kind of.
Yeah, our friend Mike Doyle from he was in a Jersey band called Lane Meyer.
A little fun fact about them, Nick, if you don't know this, is and correct me if I'm wrong, Rob. It's like I think Brian Fallon was in that band for a bit before. Obviously, he went.
Yeah, he absolutely was.
Fine fame on another kind of level, but yeah, like you mentioned on that Vinny, obviously one of our previous guests, was he was actually on the song "Become What You Hate," but for reasons with the label that you couldn't have his vocals on the actual record. Is that right?
Yeah, so this was around the time when we were kind of going back and forth and at it with Drive Thru. Now, remember, this was going to be on the upstreamed MCA label, but because the Movie Life was on Drive Thru, technically Drive Thru have the rights to say one of their artists can be featured as a feature artist on another band's track. So Drive Thru felt that Become What You Hate was about them. I didn't write the song, so I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
I didn't. I'm
Sure.
really like, listen, I'm sure it was about a lot of things and not just
Right.
one thing. But so they said, hey, we think the song's about us. We're not going to let Vinny be on the track, or we're going to somehow talk to MCA and not let you release it if Vinny's on the track. So Heath ended up recording the vocals that Vinny sang on the track.
Okay.
So how did I guess we kind of move into that that next album that you released on Columbia? Kind of how was that received? 'Cause it was quite a big shift in style, a little bit from obviously Become What You Hate. What was driving some of that?
Yeah, so we were actually in a really peculiar place with record labels at that point. We were, as we said, we were on MCA Records, Universal Music Group. And what happened with MCA at that time was they got like completely shut down. So Universal Music Group, they had a ton of labels, right? They had Universal Records, they had Motown Records, all sorts of, records. Sure-Tone, I guess, was one they created.
Yeah.
Geffen Records, all of these were under Universal Music Group. Now, what ends up happening is they say, you know what, we're shutting down MCA. So any artists on MCA, the other labels, legally, they can fight with each other and decide which artists they want. And then I guess someone at Universal decides if they allow that artist to be on Geffen or Universal or Motown or Sure-Tone or whatever it is. So I'm sure a lot of that's shared resources at the label, but that's not even the point. So the problem is none of those labels picked up Midtown when MCA went defunct. But we're signed to MCA. How do you put out a record when you're on the record label that doesn't exist and none of those record labels under the Universal umbrella pick you up? So I think that really stifled our career. And I think that is really the initial moment of where everything happened. What it probably did is it delayed us putting out an album for maybe a year and a half later than we would have. And then when that amount of time passes, what ends up happening is, well, not only that, time passed for a lot of reasons. Because of that, well, that means we have to figure out a way. We had to find new management. That new management helped us get us out of Universal Records. And then finally, we could go through that major label process, or that just any record label process of figuring out who we want to assign to, like sign with next. So all of that takes a lot of time. And at that point, when you're getting close to 2 years after the fact, your musical tastes start to change. Yeah. So when you have that much time in between, there's no bridge, there's no gap from your previous music to this new style of music you're playing. And that really freaks out fans and makes them, they're very uncertain for what they would expect from you as an artist. So I think at that point, we eventually signed to Columbia Records. We put out that album, but it didn't sound like Living Well Is the Best Revenge, and it didn't sound like our first album, Save the World Is the Girl. And I think that hurt us significantly.
Was that pretty much good to go then? Whilst was that all kind of done and dusted and written before the point where you'd actually figured out label shit and got that sorted? Had you already kind of worked on that and changed that direction, and were just waiting for the formalities to be figured out?
So when we first signed with the new management company, which is Crush Music, which is, wow, since then they've really done some great things. They manage Weezer and Green Day and Lorde and Sia, and the list goes on and on. But they back then it was like us, Fall Out Boy, which was still young days for Fall Out Boy.
Sure. Yeah.
There was I don't even think they had Gym Class Heroes yet, and they did not have Panic yet. But yeah, maybe they had Gym Class. But either way, so they managed this artist, producer named Butch Walker.
Oh yeah.
And Butch Walker, as a producer, done some cool stuff. But his band in the '90s was this power pop band called The Marvelous.
Yeah. Sorry.
Marvelous 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we knew, and I think, I think a lot of people in bands understand how talented he is, that he was a great producer, a great songwriter. So because of the relationship with Crush and Butch, it allowed us to go down to Atlanta, Georgia, to his studio and record Forget What You Know before we actually signed to a major label. So we could take that album and show it to major labels and say, hey, if you like this and you still want to sign us, let's talk. And that's how we were able to sign to Columbia Records and have that completed album. Now, the positive of doing that is if we had signed with just a few demos to Columbia Records, my God, how many additional years after Living Wolves, The Best Revenge might Forget What You Know have come out and been totally off the deep end. It probably would have sounded like some wannabe Radiohead album or something, So it would have been even more ridiculous.
So I guess fast forward a little bit then in terms of kind of Midtown kind of starting to wrap up a little bit. When did that start to happen? And I guess how was it for you? And who was, was it a collective? How did that play out?
Yeah, so our last show, I believe, was May of 2005. So that would have just been 15 years ago, a few months ago.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right? And we got home from that tour. We were exhausted. It was basically the end of the, of our entire push on Forget What You Know.
Yeah.
And it came to the time where like, all right, so the band kind of flatlined. If anything, maybe, even lost a few fans at that point. And we're like, well, we're getting older. Do you keep pushing on? Or do you say, hey, that was a fun ride and we should be smart about our futures? Now, we actually talked, we had our management talk to Columbia Records, and they agreed that they would do another album with us, that they would continue to move forward. And what ended up happening was we did that. We did talk to them, but as a band collectively, 3 of the 4 guys didn't want to go and make another Midtown album on Columbia. And I think part of that was when you don't see the success as you get older, to be able to consider, oh, can I afford rent? Or can I have nice things? Or can I even consider going on vacation? Is this a viable thing? So I think, that's one thing, but I think that's actually something you persevere and see through if you're all totally getting along together. And because we didn't see the success we were hoping for after, just this unending touring for 6 straight years of just touring, no time off, writing an album, you get on the nerves of your other bandmates and vice versa. So I think that certainly put a strain on our friendships. And because of the strain on our friendships, I think that had a lot to do with why we didn't make another album. And it wasn't just about the success versus lack of success at that moment of time. I think if we were all like besties, we would have done another album together, especially because Gabe was like, I think Gabe was a quarter teetering on it. But if Tyler and Heath were frustrated, like what's the point of pushing everybody if they're not all like in it, And I think vice versa from Tyler and Heath as well, with this similar feelings. And I do think Gabe saw at that point in time, what was happening in the world musically, right? So because we did get to play Australia and Europe a million times and whatnot, we saw electronic music and dance music was certainly getting bigger. It hadn't quite struck with America yet, right? It wasn't quite there. But, I remember when we were even recording, whether it was Save the World or Lose the Girl in LA a few years previous, we were listening to bands like The Faint and Daft Punk on repeat over and over again, and in the band. And, obviously Daft Punk The Faint isn't like, you don't think of them as your traditional like electronic disco whatever band because they were on Saddle Creek, and I'm sure there were some punk kids that played this really great different music. But Gabe, I think he saw that, and I think he
Right.
could kind of smell the future because like, and so he's like, well, if I'm going to give it a shot, let me give myself the best chance. I mean, you'd have to ask him, obviously, but it
Of
makes a
course.
lot of sense.
Yeah.
So that's and he saw Lane in an opening, and I'm sure he had spoken to Pete Wentz from Fall Out Boy
Yeah.
to have Cobra on Decadence, which is Pete Wentz's record label, and especially with some of the producers he might have been able to link up with, and the opportunity to be on the soundtrack for Snakes on a Plane.
Yeah, of course.
So
yeah.
I mean, perfect band name, Cobra Starship.
Yeah,
So,
coincided quite nicely. Yeah.
Yeah. So so when Cobra first started, I was actually talking to him, and we had jammed a few times with me on drums, and then believe it or not, me on bass.
Oh, really?
With Cobra Starship, and I'm like, I was the oldest in the band, so I'm like, maybe it's time for me to hang it up. But living in Brooklyn, my upstairs neighbor Alex, I was like, hey. First with Alex upstairs, my roommate at the time was Max Bemis from the band Say Anything.
Yeah.
And then there was a time where Max was looking for a guitar player, so that guy Alex jammed in our living room with acoustic guitars with Max to see if it was something they both wanted. And then right after that, I think Max got a guitar player, or Alex wasn't ready to tour yet, so he was still feeling out if touring was something he might want to do. I introduced him to Gabe from Midtown, and I'm like, Gabe's looking for, it was like a bass player or guitar player, and or even keyboard player at that time. And they met, they hung out, they hit it off. And then Alex's friend, the bass player of Cobra Starship, his good friend Ryland, he's like, Ryland's a shredder also, a great guitar player. He's like, well, let me have my friend Ryland be in Cobra Starship. So Cobra Starship formed because of my upstairs neighbor and my upstairs neighbor's good friend Ryland. So that's how those band members came together.
Oh, wow.
First.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about for you? Was it fairly soon after the end of this kind of touring way of life that you thought, okay, I want to stay involved in the music world and form my own record label? Did that kind of happen then, or was there a period in between?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question for how my life kind of ended up today. I actually started that record label in 2003. When I was in high school, I wanted to start a record label, but I had no money, right? So I was like, in 2003, when Midtown was still touring, I heard this demo from this kid, Greg, who is in a band called Time and Distance. I believe it's still a band, actually. And he said, and I was like, hey, Greg, I just reached out to him online. And I'm like, hey, can I like this 5-song acoustic demo you have. Maybe I can start a label and release the music, and I'll try to put you on some shows, and you'll have nothing to lose. And he was super excited. He was already a Midtown fan, which was great. My friend Laura DeMarc, she passed me along his demo. And that's how the label started in 2003. But in 2005, when Midtown breaks up, ironically, I still have the label. And that's when I put out my first full-length album on the record label, I Surrender Records. And that was Valencia, the band Valencia.
Oh, that was the first one. Okay.
Yeah. So Midtown breaks up, and I have to release my first full-length album. Well, what do I have? I have all the damn time in the world because my band broke up and I don't have a job yet. So I just started focusing on the label full time. And the transition was really the timing of having my first full-length LP and the time of Midtown being broken up to really give it that shot. And somehow, over 30 releases later, that's where I ended up today. The label's not my full-time gig. I do web development for full-time, jobby job stuff. But that's where I still have it today. And my God, this year is the next 12 months might be the busiest 12 months in terms of the label since the label started. It's the craziest thing. Yeah, I don't know how it happened.
Yeah, in what sense then? What's kind of making you busy right now? Given that I guess all these is it the fact that the bands now aren't able to go out on the road, that they're focusing more on writing and releasing music? Is that what it is?
It's a few things. It's not that, actually. It's not. Okay. It's nothing to do with the pandemic.
Okay.
So 4 years ago, we signed this artist named Lincoln, and he was the only artist that was active. We thought, okay, the label, Lincoln, we love his music. He's a big Format fan. Gabby, who runs the record label with me, she loved the Format growing up and knows Sam Means from the Format, and I think he knows all of them. She knows all of them, and so she found Lincoln on YouTube or something, and I was like, oh, this is perfect. He's great. Maybe he'll want to release some music with us. So we had him go in New Jersey in 2017 or 2016 maybe with Brett from I Am the Avalanche, the drummer of I Am the Avalanche, now the drummer of and also the drummer of the movie Life Now. Yeah. Brett recorded this EP and it's awesome. His name is Lincoln. The EP is called A Constant State of Ohio, but the story is about the first track on the EP. This was another one of those God, I wish I could hate you for the rest of my life moments, where I had to tell I had to tell Brett, I had to tell Lincoln, I had to tell Gabby. He has a song called Saint Bernard, and this song it has to go first on the EP. It has to, even if it wasn't going to be the single or whatever you want to consider a single or a focus, what the first song you release, even if it's not going to be that. We have to put this first because it's the craziest song you'll ever hear. It's like, it's that same idea, different vibe, more mellow and different than just rock and roll. But go and listen to the track after we're done with this. The song called Saint Bernard, and you'll totally get it. Okay. So 4 years ago, this EP comes out. After the first year, we're like, oh, this is interesting. This song Saint Bernard, after the first year one, it just started streaming like 800 streams a day. I'm like, that's pretty cool. We're at the end of beginning of 2018 at that point. And then at the end of 2019, we're like, oh, this is so neat. It's like, it's doing 7,000 streams a year. A day, 7,000 streams a day.
Right. Yeah.
And then middle of the year, it's like doing 14,000 streams a day. Then you get to the end of, get to the fall of 2019 and it's doing like 23,000 streams a day. All of a sudden, January 1st, 2020 hits. It bumps up to 40,000 streams a day. Pandemic hits, mid-March, over 100,000 streams a day of this song. We're like, holy shit. So it turned out, I don't know how familiar you are with TikTok, but a lot of times there'll be like these trends of videos.
Okay.
But these trends of videos that users use all have the same song. They choose to use this same familiar song. So,
right. Okay.
You've probably heard, like, you've seen some of the whether sometimes it's a dance, sometimes it's like a makeup reveal, or a food thing, whatever it is. So apparently, all these users these creators on TikTok started using his song Saint Bernard. And through all my years of Midtown, managing bands that crush music, which we didn't talk about, which is fine, but and the record label, this had never happened before. We never have a song when they talk about like viral or organic and all those stupid terms. This is the first time it ever actually happened. So that happens this year. We signed this great little punk band from New Jersey called Steve, who hopefully won't be little much longer. We have another signing that I can't announce yet, which is going to be announced very soon.
Okay.
And then we have a band we may have signed previously, which we are about to announce. They finished their album and about to announce the signing of this album that we have with them, which we won't talk about because it's not announced yet. But you know them very well. You may have even
dangling carrots here, Rob. You're dangling carrots.
You may have even interviewed them on your show in the past few months.
Okay.
But they're going to have a new album with new music that we're going to release within one month of today. And they haven't had new music in years.
Okay.
So all these things just started to happen. And Lincoln, the artist that has that TikTok song called Saint Bernard, and that's going to come out next year too. So he's going to go in with to do his full length soon too.
Just from the TikTok point of view, I mean, Chris and I were probably a little bit too old for the TikTok, but for the TikTok, but I mean,
Google
for I guess for Lincoln, is that driving revenue is it, I mean, is he seeing that from a revenue point of view? Is he being rewarded for that, for the success he's had through TikTok?
Okay, so he 100% is, and I'll tell you why. Historically, if you somehow, like, your song went big on YouTube, right?
Mm-hmm. You
historically,
monetize it,
something like, well, not even about monetizing, but something like YouTube didn't necessarily translate to Spotify and to Apple Music. Or if you had a video go real big somewhere on it, whatever it was, it didn't necessarily translate across all the other streaming platforms. More than anything else that I've ever seen, maybe in my lifetime. TikTok, if a song gets big on TikTok, people go listen to it on Spotify. People go listen to it on YouTube. People go listen to it on Apple Music, and they even purchase, obviously not a lot at this point in time, but they'll even go and purchase physical product. So it's a really wild experience to see this. So it'll be exciting for him because he never really toured. Now he has the opportunity, once the pandemic done, is to actually do shows with people singing at his shows from day one. How much fun is that? How exciting is that as an artist to have that opportunity? So
sure.
So that's
cool.
So the answer is yes. He's definitely being rewarded, and I think it's exciting for him. And it's one of those things that sometimes in life you have lightning in a bottle, and hopefully he can capitalize on that and have a really nice career. And that's our goal for him.
Cool. Well, we'll go check him out, and maybe we'll see if we can get a chat in with him at some point.
That would be sick. He loves to talk about music, so he's a true artist.
So I mean, I guess that you work in web development, but how much of the label stuff does it take your time these days? Do you have other people who, I guess, a team of people who help you drive some of that and run that show?
Yeah, absolutely. So the great thing, about having a label is that you can form a team, and that team could be people who own the label with you, or they could be outsourced people. And when I say outsourced, I mean people who can maybe oversee the complete making of a music video, a publicist that you can hire, a distributor that may have other like the distributor may have salespeople. The distributor may have, we'll see. It doesn't usually work so well, but ability to find playlists that they could try to get your artist's music on. But more specifically, I own the record label with two of my best friends, Alex, who works at Crush. Alex manages an artist named Matt Nathanson, and Alex manages Lord, who you probably know. And Alex, I met because in 1999 he put on a Midtown show at a skate park. So he was the promoter for the show. And at that show, I guess the Movie Life had a booking agent at the time by a guy named Christian McKnight. Mm-hmm. He's like, a promoter legend in the Long Island, New York City scene. He's a funny guy. He, I guess, told them to go to the show and that they're on the show, but he didn't tell the promoters of the show. So one of the first times, if not the first time Midtown ever met the Movie Life, was at the show that Alex put on, who owns the label with me now. That was a Midtown show that the Movie Life thought they were on, didn't realize. So I think I met the Movie Life and Alex the same day at the same show.
Okay.
And now Alex is killing it at Crush. And then, Gabby, who's the other owner of I Surrender, I met her because in around 2001 or so, back then when you emailed, it wasn't really on your phones. You had to get on the internet. You had to get on a computer. And I was like, I'd be in Utrecht and begging the promoter to get on their computer, dial-up internet, so I could update the shows that have been canceled or added, so I could respond to emails. And back then, when you wanted to respond to an email, first of all, it was basically done on a web browser, and you would write the email, you would hit send, and then it would take 30 seconds to get to the next page, which would say, would you like to go to the inbox, or would you like to go to the next message, or would you like to delete it? Then you click that. And then it goes to the next page after 30 seconds because you're on dial-up. So I was like, I would try to write 3 emails and it would take an hour on these like slow network or dial-ups when I was overseas. So I'm like, Gabby was our friend. She ended up being our good friend from Midtown. She was a fan and then a friend, because she ran our message boards. They had these things called Yahoo groups, which like were the best punk rock message boards for like pop punk emo bands back in the day. Like everybody had one, and the bands talked on them. Like on Newfound Glory, like on ours, I was talking on it all the time. Heath and our band was talking on it. On the Newfound Glory one, Ian was all over it. Ian, the bass player from Newfound, stuff like that. So all bands had them. I'm sure Movie Life had them and all that stuff. So she was one of the 2 message board admins or whatever you call them, and the group's admins. So I was like, hey Gabby, dude, could you help me please? I can't get anything done on the road. It's like, because you didn't have smartphones, there's still some dial-up, and even when you had Ethernet connections, people didn't really have Wi-Fi back then. When you had Ethernet connections, it took forever. So she did that, and then she started helping update our website. And then she started helping update our MySpace and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, all those stuff.
So she ended up moving from Arizona to New York to go to Pace University. And I was like, Gabby, I have this record label now. I know Midtown isn't a thing, but would you mind interning at my record label? So she helped with all the social media stuff for I Surrender back then for like 4. Okay. She was big helping with 4 Year Strong's career. She did a lot with that from a label standpoint, and Valencia as well, and a bunch of our other bands. Now, Crush needed people to help with marketing, so she killed it with I Surrender. So we're like, Crush has to hire her. So now Gabby oversees marketing for freaking Green Day and Weezer and Fall Out Boy and Sia and Lord. So just a punk kid going to shows, loving the format in Arizona, and now she's just slaying the world. So she helps a lot with everything marketing and whatnot as well with the label. So she's just a wonderful human, and very lucky that Midtown was all the Midtown guys are very fortunate that she was involved in our life.
Happy days.
Happy days. Quarantined.
Yeah, what have you got much planned for the weekend? I mean, what's your weekend looking like?
What am I doing this weekend? I'm gonna make a vegan calzone, which is amazing.
What vegan cheese do you use for that?
Okay, so have you heard of Violife?
Yeah. That's like the biggest one over here.
So that melts a lot better than Daya. Have you heard of Daya?
Yeah. That we don't get that as much here, but yeah, I know it. Yeah.
So Violife. But it's funny because I've been vegetarian. I was vegetarian since I think 1998 or 97. 98, January 98 or 97. Right, I don't even remember anymore. And like I always knew going fully plant-based was what I should be doing. But sure. And I get it. It's hard. You don't fully understand. You don't fully know, and it's. Not only is it like, oh, I love cheese, I could never get I hear that, whatever, bacon, whatever. But I think also on a social level, it is hard to be vegan or even vegetarian, because it's like people roll their eyes at you or give you shit. But it's like, I'm not doing it for me. Like, come on, give me a break. But what ended up happening is fall of last year, fall of 2019, there was this product that came out called Just Egg. Have you heard of this?
Yeah,
Just Egg?
I have. Yeah. It hasn't made its way over to the UK, but I'm fully aware of it, though. Yeah. Okay. Is it good? Is it realistic?
Okay. It's a liquid, and it scrambles just like an egg. It's like, like, how did this happen? I don't know how this happened. So one of the things I would always do as a vegetarian was make like egg and cheese sandwiches or omelets, or go into the bodega at 2 a.m. in the morning when you're drunk to get your bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich, blah blah blah. I would make egg and cheese sandwiches all the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, once I saw this thing, I was like, oh, it's it's not crazy expensive. It's actually only $4.99 here in the U.S. now at Whole Foods.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna buy this. And then after I started buying that, I'm like, I'll try the vegan cheese. So I was just like, wait a second. In 2020, it is so easy to be vegan. I think it's easier to be plant-based in 2020 than it was to be vegetarian in 2010. I actually think it's easier to be vegan today than 10 years ago being vegetarian because it's just so many options.
Yeah. Particularly somewhere like the US or the UK, it's crazy.
Yeah, like literally last night, I went to a like a outdoor sports. Everything's outdoor now in New York, but so like a outdoor sports bar thing to watch the Raptors Celtics game, and I'm just like, I look at the menu and it just says Beyond Burger. It's like, and then. But this is a meat bar. Like, this place is known for their wings, right?
Sure.
And after the Beyond Burger, it had an option for like a bean veggie burger, right? So the fact that there's not one but two options at like a primarily meat-based place is kind of a big deal. But for me, it's just so easy. How could I not at this point? Because I know for me, for my opinion and how I feel, it is something important to me to know that I can, if it's easy for me to impact for a positive change without having to change my life much, then how could I say no? And that's kind of how I felt about it. So, but the one funny thing that you bring that up about the Violife cheese, I actually follow a lot of those like ridiculous vegan Instagram pages where they just show like amazing food after amazing food where like you're just salivating, like, how did you make that vegan? Well, a lot of times they I don't remember them by names, but like every time I'm like, oh my God, what is this amazing thing? And they're like, you can only get it at some like the famous grocery stores in the UK. And I was like, shit. So we have it both ways where there's a lot of, because I think UK must be real big on plant-based now because it feels real. It feels like it's a big thing.
Yeah. Particularly in London where I live as well. Yeah, it's certainly like the last 3 or 4 years, it's just exploded.
It's always been bigger. In the UK, and I think it actually has a lot to do with a number of years ago. Young people don't remember this, but there was a big epidemic of mad cow's disease in
1996. Yeah, I remember.
19, which is interesting because that 1996 is about the year that this kind of punk music probably started to break for you and you started to learn about it. So
yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
So that's why in your mind and in my mind, it's like, it's such an event that we remember 96, there was a big outbreak of mad cow's disease. They probably had to kill a ton of cows. Farms probably shut down. Other countries weren't importing meat from the UK and all that sort of thing. So because of that, I think that helped the UK get ahead of other countries on saying, okay, we got to put a veggie burger at McDonald's, a veggie burger on Burger King. Are you veg?
Yeah, I'm veg. I've tried to be vegan before. I've like lasted a couple of years, and now like I eat mostly plant-based, but I'm a bit more relaxed on it. So I will have cheese every now and then, even it's not.
This is the first I've heard, Chris. This is new information to me.
No, you like raised an eyebrow a few weeks back when I mentioned a paneer dish I'd made.
Oh, that's true.
I'm eating paneer, yeah. So I'm a casual cheese eater now. I have to confess. I kind of want to ramp up it to mainly plant based. So are you like fully plant? I know obviously you've been veggie for forever at this point, Rob. But so are you saying that you are basically plant based at this point?
Yeah, 100% plant based for about 9 months. Now,
ever since Just Egg, basically.
Yeah, no. But what is funny is, well, it's actually opened me up to more food than I would have ever imagined eating. But once you go vegan, you're like, holy shit, there's so much more out there, and I have so many more options because now I'm looking for it. My blinders were taken off, and that's why it's kind of great. I'm gonna shout out, especially on the point of vegan or vegetarian. I think. Somebody who has a lot of interesting stories about it in terms of his past via times of CBGBs and otherwise is Toby Morse, the singer of H2O.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you a quick story, and then if you get him as an interview, you can bring this up to him. So
Okay,
I
sounds
think
good.
I think it was about 94. First of all, he's been vegan since the 80s, I believe. I think the 80s, if not the early 90s, but I think the 80s. And I actually, and the reason I know this and it's so topical is, do you know who Kevin Smith is? He is the director of
Yeah,
Mallrats and Clerks.
the director actor, yeah, because he nearly died and then he went fully plant based after that, didn't he, or something? And now he's looking better than ever.
That's right. So
Yeah.
his daughter was vegan when he had his issues, and his daughter basically made him go vegan to help save his life. And
Yes.
they started a podcast called Vegan Abattoir. And his daughter, Harley Quinn Smith, which is a fantastic name, Harley Quinn interviewed Toby Morse of H2O a few weeks ago on their podcast, and he talked
really?
about it
Okay.
and what he's doing now. So I think that could be interesting, even to bring up to him a few things. One, because I'm curious, I'd like to hear it. What was it like for him being vegan touring in the UK versus in the US?
Yeah.
Moreover, I believe it was 1994. It might have been 95. I went to that venue called City Gardens, a 500 capacity venue in Trenton, New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to see Rancid headline. And this is part of just how cool the scene can be compared to like going to a concert, right? Rancid finishes their set and they said, hey, there's this new band called H2O. You know, our friend Toby sings. They've never played a show before. We're going to, even though our show's done, we're going to have them come on stage and play a song or two for you. So I was at H2O's first show unintentionally because I went to see Rancid. So his first experience of that was Trenton, New Jersey, in the middle, you know, of a shady area, in I'd say 94, 95. So you could ask him that. But yeah, you should reach out to him.
Yeah, definitely. We haven't done that before, so I think that's a very good show.
And he was, by the way, H2O, that same record label that Midtown was on when the label folded. H2O was on that label too, so I think that might be interesting because I'm curious, how did that experience? Did that hurt their band? Was that did that like kind of mess up things for them as well, or did they get off the?
If we get that booked, you should just come on with us as a guest co-host.
I'm not worthy. All right, I would have some questions, but yes, I'd probably go all vegan on it and like bore everybody listening to death. They don't want to hear that shit. Yeah.
We've covered a few subjects today anyway, which is good. Not just the music, which is
that's true.
I was going to say, should we wrap things up? We've probably taken a good couple of hours of your time now, so
no diggity, no doubt.
Cool. No, Rob, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and like.
Yeah, I got to learn to stop talking. That's for sure. Oh my God. Okay, best way to end this. He wrote, he goes, ha, Tyler from Midtown writes, ha, not anymore. I covered up the tattoo.
No.
I covered it up, but definitely took the heart from there. And he goes, literally just covered it up.
Oh, really?
Literally just covered it up.
I hope it was with something worthy.
Yeah. Well, if you want to interview any of the other Midtown guys, just let me know.
Yes, thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Cool.
Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, we'd love it if you could subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast, whether that's iTunes or Spotify or Stitcher or anywhere like that. Also, check us out on social media. If you just search for Wasting Time Podcast on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, give us a like or a follow on any of those. And also, we love hearing from listeners as well. So feel free anytime to drop us an email at thewastingtimepodcast@gmail.com, or obviously you can message us on social media as well. But we'll catch you next time.